Alright, welcome back to the Shade Tree Garage, guys. And today we're talking gauges, but not tachometers. I've done enough content about tachometers to last me for a while. We're talking about the inside gauges. I bought a trio of Autometer gauges in one set. Water temperature, oil pressure, and voltage. And it's a good looking set of gauges, got a nice chrome bezel. And I ran that as is for a while. And I wanted to add, however, a vacuum gauge. Now, I used a vacuum gauge on my earliest 55 that I bought 40 years ago. And it was always a very handy gauge to have, to be able to watch. So I wanted a vacuum gauge just for old time's sake. And so I bought an Autometer vacuum gauge. And then I had to find a 4-gauge, a gauge for 4 2 5/8 inch gauges. Now that I only found one vendor that had that, and I've already discussed who that was. And they actually have gauge bezels for 4-gauge, 5-gauge, and 6 gauges. So they've got quite the selection there. But I ran into some problems with the 4-gauge bezel. Actually, not the bezel. It was the Autometer gauge. I paid well over $100 for a Autometer vacuum gauge, brand new. And it was a good looking gauge. My only complaint was that the indicator needle was red and not white like the other gauges, but I'll let that slide. So I put the gauge in, and everything seemed copacetic, and it was working, and when I tried it, and then I finally gave it tightened up all the gauges to their final tightness, and the vacuum gauge quit. So I took it back out and tried it with the vacuum line, and it worked again. So put it back in, and I'm also checking the lighting. The backlighting on this Autometer gauge was pitiful. It was bad. It really was. Almost non-existent. Now the other 3 gauges in that package had translucent dials, so the backlight actually came through from the rear, and it was wonderful. Did a beautiful job of lighting. The vacuum gauge Autometer sells, not so much. You could only see a little bit of light around the dial, and that was it. There was no way you were going to get a very good reading from that. So I made the decision that I had to find something else. I've been meaning to, and I haven't yet, but I will call Autometer and ask them if they have a vacuum gauge with the gauge face that's translucent like the trio of gauges I have. In the meantime, I decided to do away with my Autometer vacuum gauge. Every time I mounted it solidly in the bezel, it quit. Apparently put the mechanism in some sort of bind, maybe. The hose was fine. So I just took it out, and I found an ancient Stewart-Warner vacuum gauge. Beautiful condition, just all original. And so 2 5/8, right size. So I put that in. And now it does look different than the other gauges, but it reads fine. Now, as far as backlighting goes, it's not bad. It's not as good as the Autometer gauges, but it's not bad. Now, if I find an Autometer gauge that's priced reasonably and that I can that will match my other gauges as far as backlighting goes, I may be tempted. I don't know. When it comes right down to it, vacuum gauge isn't life or death. You do want to know your oil pressure and water temperature. Those are the 2 important ones. So anyway, I'll check into that, and right now I'll show you what my gauges look like and the backlighting that I have available. Alright guys, here's what the gauges look like right now, and you can see the reflection there on the dash. The vacuum is the 3rd from the left. And let me hit the lights and you can get a good look at that. Let me kill this light here. Now you can see the difference between the gauges. And it is substantial. It's wonderful to be able to see the 3 gauges in all their glory, and the vacuum gauge is just that's it. That's all you got right there. So yeah, it's still less than I want, but right now it'll do. All right, let me Alright, let's see if this thing fires up. Alright, that's good. Alright guys, well that's what the gauges look like, and I think for now that's going to be it. I just wish I could improve the backlighting on that vacuum gauge, but it is what it is. Now, the one thing I may try doing is moving them around. I may move the vacuum gauge over to the end. Anyway, I've got a bunch of other projects. Now, this is late October, the end of the cruise season. Locally, it's just about here, and I'm kind of waiting for that for the season to end before I tackle some other projects. For example, the driver's door here, I've got to change. I've got new glass for it. I've got to change all the fuzzies. All the hardware and stuff needs to come off, and I need to rebuild this door. I've done it before on the other one. This one should take less time, but I didn't want to start it until, you know, we got down the road a little bit, down into the winter. I've got to finish mounting the bezel trim around the windshield. It painted it black. And then also door panels. I've got door panels to mount, to cover and mount, and then the door bezels to put back up. And let's see, also carpets on that list. I've got to get a couple pieces of carpet for this. And then I need to work on the back seat side panels. And those will be fairly easy to do since there's no window mechanism poking through there. All right, well, thanks for stopping in, and I should have more coming before long here in the Shade Tree Garage, including work on a mower, on my truck, and on my wife's car. Wish me luck. We'll see you then. Take care.